Hello everyone and welcome to this audio podcast. This audio podcast as part of a Helium Space additional series. This audio podcast as part of Calibrated Morphology. This audio podcast as part of a Storm Robotics production. In this audio podcast, a little bit around the monitoring aspects of hematuria. So it is important to establish a cause around hematuria as early as possible. In the published works from 2015, there's an overview in around sort of the indications in around the indications for sort of monitoring in around monitoring and so for example, number one of the main things is persistent unseen hematuria with or without proteinuria should stimulate investigation for potential urinary tract malignancies in appropriate age groups. And secondly, consistent unseen hematuria in the absence of proteinuria should be followed up annually with a repeat testing for hematuria, proteinuria, or albuminuria, EGFR or GFR, and ABP monitoring. ABP monitoring whilst hematuria continues, and in addition, there are some pitfalls. In monitoring consistent hematuria without formal POCT or point of care testing programs in around community example, for example, access to point of care testing sort of and screening sort of kits, for example. And in addition, assessment of glomerular hematuria may be inhibited by the presence of non-glomerular hematuria. Microhematuria is not monitored routinely, as is the case with albuminuria and proteinuria, unless albuminuria and proteinuria are linked with specific forms of renal disease, and this presents a challenge to evaluate sort of the over long term on the trajectory around hematuria in recipients. Patients with microhematuria therefore require treatment earlier than those without hematuria. That draws this audio podcast to a close. This has been an audio podcast as part of the Helium Space series or edition. This audio podcast as part of a Calibrated Morphology. This audio podcast as part of a Storm Robotics production.